You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast, the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me on socials at SamLittle44 and the podcast at Maple Footy Pod. And now there's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, yes, and welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast. You already know what we are. The unofficial football podcast of the North. And yeah, after a little bit of a 2-week break, we're back talking about some Canadian footy. And I will take the time now to remind you that our interview with Rama went up a couple of weeks ago. Really enjoyed that one. I will link it somewhere for you to check out. And I definitely think that you should. I think it's a great interview. Rama is a great player and really enjoyed that little conversation that we did have. But today, of course, what we will be talking about is some of the happenings in Canadian football over the last 2-ish weeks that I may have missed out on. A lot of transfer speculation and news that we will be covering in depth, and I'll kind of give you my opinions and feelings on some of them. And of course, the title of this will indicate that we'll be talking in depth about Jonathan David, and that is exactly what we will be doing. Outside of that, we'll be talking a little bit about some injury updates, some CPL news, and call it a day from there. So what do you say we get into some of those transfer news right now? As with all good shows, the main event always comes first, right? We all know this. So that's exactly why we'll be talking about Jonathan David first, because he's probably the most interesting news story in Canadian football at the moment. So it's been reported that Jonathan David is no longer in Spalletti's plans at Juve. Spalletti, of course, the manager of the team. And there have been rumors of him going to places like Aston Villa, PSG, Paris FC, and Hull City. And I'll kind of give you my opinion on each of these things. Firstly, him not being in the plans with Spalletti. I take this a little bit with a grain of salt. I think we'll have to wait and see if Jonathan David per se does stay with Juventus. I think then you'll kind of see if he's in the plans or not, whether he's in the match day squads and everything. I think it does speak volumes, though, that Juventus doesn't seem too keen on him, even though they've lost Dusan Vlahovic this summer and looking like they're going to be sticking with Jeremy Boga as their starting striker, who naturally isn't really even a striker. So I think that's kind of interesting to see from there. And from transfer perspectives now, I think that this is a hugely important transfer window for Jonathan David. And it does feel like we've said that about Jonathan David for about the last 12 transfer windows. But this does feel very important because if he does leave Juventus, I just don't think he can get this move wrong. Juventus has kind of proven to be maybe this wasn't the best scenario, and I still maintain if Juventus give him time, I do think that he could come good. Just look at his first season at Lille. He was not the Jonathan David that left Lille that came into Lille. So I do think that he does need time to acclimatize and whatnot. But regardless, if Juventus have made their decision, they've made their decision. So looking at the teams that he could go to, I honestly think this is a no-brainer. It's Aston Villa. He should go to Aston Villa if that is a legitimate destination for him. I just think the way that Unai Emery plays, the team that they have, Champions League football, pushing in cup competitions, will be pushing again for a top 4 this season, will most likely get into a top 4 or Europa League spot, so he'll still have European football. Villa are known to have some halfway decent strikers. They're known to help revitalize guys' careers as well. So I do think that Aston Villa, of these 4 options, is the no-brainer. If they come in, I think you go if you're Jonathan David. Of course, not as easy because there are agent fees and agents and, transfer fees and all that stuff, but all things level, I would say Aston Villa. Looking at the other teams here, PSG, and now anybody would be lucky to play for PSG right now, especially with how good they are. My concern for Jonathan David as an attacker, does he break into that starting lineup as a guy who really needs to play? I don't think he does. They don't really play with a proper striker. I know Dembele is their striker, but that whole front three kind of likes to just do their own thing, So I'm not really sure that then adding in Jonathan David, I'm not sure who you take out of that lineup. You're not going to take out Kvaratskhelia, who in my opinion could be in for a Ballon d'Or realistically. That's how good of a season he had, reigning UEFA Champions League player of the season as well. Then you have Desiree Doué, who PSG really likes and I really think is a top young talent in the world. Then of course reigning Ballon d'Or winner Ousmane Dembele. that's really going to be a tough lineup to crack. No, like I think they would be, right? And even if they change the formation that they play, which I'm not sure they would do for Jonathan David, you know, are you going to take out a sacrifice midfielder? Like, are you going to take out a Fabian Ruiz? Probably not. Are you going to take out a Vitinha? Probably not. Are you going to take out a Neves? Probably not. You know what I mean? I just think that there's so many same issues, just a bit better, that plague PSG that would plague Juventus from a Jonathan David perspective, because PSG are right now the perfect team on paper. But just in a Jonathan David perspective, is he going to get playing time if he goes to PSG? I don't think so. So as PSG are a phenomenal team, from a Jonathan David perspective, I don't think it would be a good move. Then you look at Paris FC. I think this would be a bit of a gamble. They're kind of a project right now. They just brought in Liam Rosenior, formerly of Chelsea. They've made some moves in the transfer market. Jonathan David, of course, I think if they were to get him, would be the biggest move of their transfer window so far. So that could be a cool project to sign up onto. My only thing with that is then you should just stay at Lille then, because you're kind of at that same level. No disrespect to Lille or Paris FC, but they're kind of the same level of a project team that's looking to develop players and either sell them for profit or try to challenge PSG in the coming years. So I would be hesitant to join Paris FC just because it's kind of a project team, and those can go one of two ways. And especially now he's entering his prime years. Do you want to sign up for a question mark project? I'm not super sure. Then you look at Hull City. I don't think he should go to Hull City. It's nothing against Hull City. Of course, we have the Maple Footy podcast. We'll be rooting for Hull City throughout this season. But for Jonathan David to go from Juventus to a newly promoted side in the Premier League that a lot of people are touting will most likely go down, and on paper it's hard to argue. I will argue it, though. Hull City will stay up. But regardless, that is a big-time risk, I think, going from one of the top clubs in the world, you know, based off of name and reputation, to then going to a team that's returned to the Premier League after nearly a decade out of it. That's a big gamble. Then if they go down, they get relegated. Who is really coming in for a Jonathan David, and how good is he going to look in a Hull City team that I think will probably struggle to score this season, as most newly promoted sides usually tend to do. So it is the sense of, well, if they get relegated, he'll just leave. But then he's kind of in the same scenario again, but just worse off now, because it would be most likely 2 seasons, the first Juventus season and now a Hull season, where he's most likely not going to score a ton of goals in that Hull side. So now you're 2 seasons back to back of not scoring a ton of goals, have a relegation on your CV now. Is that really the most attractive striker prospect? Now he's going to be 27 at the end of the season. You know, is it the most attractive striker project for a team, say, next transfer window? I just think that there's too many ifs, ands, or buts around a lot of the other teams outside of an Aston Villa. So for me, of these 4 teams, it has to be Aston Villa if they do come in for him. PSG is a phenomenal team. I will not argue that. But for Jonathan David, I'm not sure it would be the right fit. Paris FC would be an interesting project, but once again, kind of a lateral from Lille. And then Hull City would be a massive, massive gamble. So for me, Aston Villa should be, if they do come in for him, the destination for Jonathan David. All right, enough about Jonathan David. Let's talk about some more transfers, and 2 transfers MLS-wise that really excite me. So CF Montreal pulled off a massive transfer, getting in Alexis Sanchez, and now we can, of course, talk about his best football is behind him. He's pushing 40. Yes, that is true, and I won't argue it. But on the flip side, this feels like the first massive signing that CF Montreal have made in I don't even know how long, genuinely. This feels like a huge blockbuster signing for them, based off of his name, reputation, everything that he can bring to that squad and that city. Those fans have needed something to cheer for quite some time, and it looks like the ownership group of Montreal looking like that now could be the case. So very excited to see what Montreal can do for the remainder of this season. They aren't out of the playoff race. Them and TFC are outside the spots, yes, but both of them still kind of showing signs of life in the playoff race. So could be a team to watch now for for the remainder of the season. Another team in the MLS of the Canadian variety that made a transfer that I'm very happy about. Kwasi Poku has gone to the Vancouver Whitecaps, and I had said when it looked like he wasn't returning to Belgium that I think an MLS side should take a punt on him, and obviously Vancouver Whitecaps watch this podcast because they did exactly that. Kwasi Poku, of course, had a great time with Forge, winning a lot of silverware, one Young Player of the Year there as well, then went to Belgium, started out really well, then got the injury bug, now is back in Canada at the top team in the MLS on the Canadian side and one of the top teams just in the league, period. I think it's a really great move for him. He's still young, only 23 years old, so this is a move that I think as well could maybe potentially get him back into Canadian men's national team conversations. Of course, Jesse Marsch has had him on the squad in the past. I think back to that Panama game back in 2024, I believe, where Kwasi Poku made his men's national team debut. So you do look and you go, could be a smart move for Kwasi Poku. Going to be interested to see how much he can play. He's still kind of rehabbing an injury at the moment, but it looks like it won't be to keep him out too long. He's in training with the Whitecaps, so really excited for Kwasi Poku. I'm a big fan of him, so really cool to see him get this move to the Vancouver Whitecaps. Outside of that, some moves of the Scottish League variety. Jamie Knight-Lebel has gone to Motherwell and has already since made his debut and everything. That's how quickly the world moves when you take a couple weeks off of your podcast. But just want to give a quick thought on this. Really like this move for Knight-Lebel. He's kind of one of those guys that feels on the radar for the Canadian men's national team, especially with maybe certain players coming out, more young players maybe going to be getting a chance. Jamie Knight-Lebel has to be on the top of that list of young players that could get a real proper shot with the men's national team. So could be a very big season ahead for him. Then there are transfer rumors circulating again of Nico Sigur could be on his way to Celtic. Nothing confirmed, nothing set in stone, but the rumors are rearing their heads again, and it comes at the expense of Alistair Johnston getting injured, which we'll kind of get into a little bit more when we talk about some injuries. But Nico Sigur to Celtic, I think, would be a really good move. If I'm Nico Sigur, which I'm of course not, I'm Sam Little, terrible joke, I personally would be going to somewhere where I'm going to be playing in the midfield. I think that he excels as a midfielder. I know that he's a versatile player that can play at right back. Some reports even suggesting that he can play at center back. I'm going where I can play in the midfield. Me personally, if I'm him, I think that's where he excels. I think that's where you get the best out of him. He is a great midfielder, and maybe now I'm just speaking selfishly. I want to see great midfielders playing for Canada in the midfield, so I'd love to see Nico Sigur go somewhere, if that is Celtic, where he could play in the midfield. Elsewhere, Daniel Jebbo, one of the probably biggest players that missed out on our World Cup squad, could have himself a big move on the horizon. There have been reports of him potentially going to Hamburg in the Bundesliga and Genoa in the Serie A, as well as a couple of championship clubs are also interested in signing him on a permanent basis. But there have also been reports that have broken about Bournemouth potentially keeping him on for this season ahead and maybe actually getting some proper, real first team minutes. So it could be a very interesting time in Daniel Jebbison's career. He is still only 22 years old, I believe, off the top of the dome. So this could be a very interesting summer for him. I honestly, any of these scenarios, I would be okay with. Hamburg could be really, really great for him. Genoa could be great. We've seen how Serie A has helped develop many players, not just Canadian players, but many players throughout it. And then the Bundesliga, of course, I think it is a good league. I know people will go, oh, well, Bayern wins it every year. I don't care. They're still a very good league. Then championship clubs as well. I think if I'm him, maybe you're kind of steering towards a top flight club, but still the English Championship is still a very great league. And then if Bournemouth does want to keep him on, why not? If he's going to get the playing time, I think that could be a great step for him and his career and his development if he can stay with Bournemouth and maybe solidify that starting number 9 position. I really don't see any of these as a lose-lose situation so long as he goes to a place or stays at a place where he will be getting game time so that he can develop and we can see the best of Daniel Jebbo. Outside of that, Moise Bombito could be on the move, but this one is one that you take with massive grains of salt. Some reports were suggesting that Torino have been keeping tabs on Moise Bombito, with Nice needing to make player sales. That is, I think, the key part here is Nice need to make player sales through all the different financial rules and whatnot. They need to make player sales this summer. Moise Bombito could be top of that list. I'm not sure they're going to let go of Moise Bombito just because, one, he's coming off an injury, and two, because of that, I don't think his market value is at its highest. If they want, I think they help rehabilitate him, get him back to his best, and then they sell him for a lot more than what they would be getting now. Right now, they'd probably be getting somewhere in between like maybe 8 to 10 million pounds. But if you rehab him, get him better, I think you'd be flipping up to upwards of 20 to 30 mil. Let's be real here. He's a class player. I would like him at Torino, but also maybe we wait the season, let him rehab, get back into proper form. Another one of our Canadian center backs as well could be on the move here because Derek Cornelius is apparently attracting some attention from the Serie A. Apparently Sassuolo are in for him. Genoa have also been thrown around, and a third team was not named. But Derek Cornelius has, of course, had a turbulent time since joining Marseille. It's been very up and down for him. We know that he is class. He's been a big part of Jesse Marsch's plans, was a big part at our World Cup, and really since Marsch's came in, let's be real. So I think he needs to solidify a home, I think. That's what I'm trying to get at. He needs to solidify a home, whether that be Genoa, whether that be Sassuolo, whether he stays at Marseille, or it be a different club. I think he needs to go to a place where he's going to play, and he knows that the playing time is going to be consistent, and that he can stay healthy, stay fit, and keep in those Canadian men's national team squads, and keep being an important player for us going forward. And finally, wrapping it up here, not a transfer, but a contract extension. Ralph Priso, who's a man that I've championed for over a year now on this podcast, I think has a huge future with both the Whitecaps and the Canadian men's national team, has signed an extension through to the 2028-29 season with a club option for the 29 to 30 season. That is huge. That's massive. Really happy for Ralph Priso. The absolute rise that he's been on over this last year with the Whitecaps, I think has been something spectacular to watch, and was one of those unlucky guys that did miss out on our World Cup squad, and definitely I think could have found a place in that squad. But regardless, now it's all on the future for Ralph Priso, and I do think that we would be silly not to incorporate him into our squads going forward. He is a class player, versatile player. As Thomas Muller once said, call him up. And now it wouldn't be a Canadian 2026 without some injury news to talk about. And one of the biggest blows I think that Canada could have suffered would be Ali Ahmed picking up a knee injury during preseason. And it's such a shame. He's going to be out for most likely all of the season with the ACL tear that did take place. I think it's brutal. The sport is so unforgiving to these guys, and it is a big shame. On the bright side, not there is many bright sides, is this has happened after and not before the World Cup, so he didn't miss that. We knew coming into the World Cup he wasn't super fit, and I wonder if that may have played a part in him picking up a more significant injury. But regardless, it is a huge, huge shame for him. This was looking like it could be a really big season for both him and for Norwich as a whole, as they were looking to build on how they finished last season to try to get the promotion spots. He himself enjoyed just a phenomenal season with Norwich. So it really does suck. He could potentially be back during crunch time of the season, but then, of course, those are conversations for coaches and medical staff to have, but you most likely wouldn't be getting the best of him, and would he really even play a whole ton if it's crunch time of the season and say Norwich are trying to fight for a promotion spot? Are you going to now throw in a guy who's coming back from an ACL injury? Probably not. So all things considered, he's most likely sitting out most to all of this season coming up. It is a huge shame, and I just feel for him. I feel for all these guys. ACL injuries seem to just be plaguing Canada at the moment. Just off the top of my head, you've had Marcel Flores, Alphonso Davies, Liam Miller, Ali Ahmed, all within the span of less than 2 years, all going out with these ACL injuries. And I'm sure there might even be guys that I have forgotten. Then, you look at the other massive injuries that we've sustained that weren't ACL related, but just huge injuries. It's been just a brutal time for Canada and these injuries, and sadly Ali Ahmed was one of the men that has now been added to that injury list. So all the best to him. We know that he'll come back. He'll come back better. It is just a shame, and it's going to suck that we won't get to see Ali Ahmed lighten it up in the English Championship again, and ideally would have been helping Norwich get those promotion spots. Another man that picked up a knee injury, but apparently is nothing serious, was Jonathan Osorio. He picked up an injury during the prep for New England Revolution's match, where he suffered an injury. They did not disclose how long it would be. They did say it wasn't a long-term issue, but they didn't disclose if it would be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 week, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. They didn't say. So it's not long-term, but we don't know what that entails. The rest of the roster, though, for TFC, who have kind of had the Canada injury gene this season, apparently the rest of the squad, as per Robin Fraser, are looking a bit more healthy, looking like they're going to get back up to full fitness very, very soon, which is very, very good for Toronto FC. So hoping Jonathan Osorio is only out for those couple of weeks. Hopefully it's nothing serious, but if it's any consolation, Robin Fraser did say that he scored a really good goal in training, and that's what caused the knee injury. So, silver linings, I guess. And then finally, as we kind of touched upon a bit earlier, Alistair Johnston picked up himself another injury, another guy that just cannot seem to shake these injuries at the moment. He will be out to 5 to 6 weeks apparently, and looking like any semblance of a potential transfer out of Celtic to an Everton or a Fulham or a Crystal Palace, 3 teams that were apparently in for him, looking like they're off the table. Now I can't see these clubs coming in for him while he is out injured, which is a shame. I think any of those clubs would have been a great step for Alistair Johnston in his career, but sadly injuries come and they are unforgiving. So Alistair Johnston will be on the sideline for about 5 to 6 weeks. Celtic are expecting to have him back sometime in September, maybe early October. But yeah, really big shame about some of these injuries here, especially, like I said, that Ali Ahmed one is absolutely brutal. Going to be missing most of this season. That one sucks. Hoping Jonathan Osorio and Alistair Johnston are back sooner rather than later, as theirs don't seem to be as serious as Ali Ahmed's. But yeah, what can you say? Injuries are the worst. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about some goalies that are having themselves quite the good post-World Cup run, and a certain goalie that has not had himself a good post-World Cup run. Jonathan Sigur with Dallas has had himself an absolute blinder since the MLS has returned and picked up a couple clean sheets. In one match, even held a career-high 9 saves in a match, and surely has to be putting himself back onto Jesse Marsch's radar. We know Marsch has called up Sigur in the past, so maybe now with this new form, will Sigur potentially be getting himself back into Canadian men's national team talks? And it is important to note, Sigur is still young, still only 24, 25 years old. He is we could genuinely be seeing Sigur really kind of getting himself into pole position to at least be in the conversations for the future of goalkeeping for Canada, because he is looking very, very good. Another man, though, that has looked absolutely phenomenal post-World Cup is Hamilton's own Luka Gavran with TFC. I was at the game against New England. He made some absolutely stellar saves. Probably should have been man of the match in that game. I thought he was just phenomenal. And post-World Cup has barely conceded anything, making some big, big saves. If TFC can somehow get a playoff spot, which I maintain, I do still think they will. I said at the start of the season, I cannot backtrack on it now. I think that Gavran is a huge part of that. He has absolutely grown into this role. I know at the start of the season, people were saying that he was a bit shaky, and maybe was he ready to be number one? I think he has put all that talk to doubt. Luka Gavran has put that talk to bed. I think he has been a phenomenal goalkeeper for Toronto FC this season. He's looked absolutely class, especially post-World Cup. He's looked like a man that's fighting to try to get into that Canadian men's national team side. Kind of like Sigur, we know that Jesse Marsch has called him up in the past, so could that be the case now? Time will tell, but these two guys are definitely doing their part to try to get those conversations going. Outside of that, though, James Pantemis and Maxime Crepeau have both picked up where they've left off, both of them looking very strong for Orlando and Portland, the teams that they do in fact play for. They have looked absolutely class post-World Cup, which to be expected. Ducks quack, water's wet. Crepeau, Pantemis look class. It's just some of the certainties in life. Something that has been very disappointing post-World Cup has been Dayne St. Clair's lack of game time. And I know he was not the Dayne St. Clair of last season, this season with Inter Miami, but he has now been benched 5 games in a row in all competitions for Inter Miami. And I really don't see why, especially when Rayos is making even worse mistakes than Dayne St. Clair was. So I really don't know why Dayne St. Clair is being punished this badly. I understand you bench him for a game or two, send a message of, hey man, you need to get your form up. But in literally the first game, Rayos literally lets in one of the worst goals you'll see. And then this past weekend, he lets in another terrible goal. Dayne St. Clair, regardless of how you feel about his form throughout the season, was not that bad. Come on. What are we doing? Dayne St. Clair has got to be either starting for Inter Miami again, or he needs to be talking to his agent to get himself a move out of Inter Miami. He is now at a point in his career where he needs to play. He needs to be a number one at his club, because with guys like Kripo, who has been the number one for Canada at the World Cup, then you have guys like Pantemis, who is very much pushing, Owen Goodman, who's very much pushing. Now you have other guys like Sigur and Gavrin. Then you look to an Emil Gazdov, who's still young, a Tom McGill, who's still young. These guys will be pushing. So if you're Dayne St. Clair, you need to be a number one somewhere. So if that means leaving Inter Miami, I think that might have to be the move for him. But yeah, some very interesting goalkeeper conversations will be coming up, I think, during this September friendly window. And it's going to be very interesting to see the 3 guys that Jesse Marsch will pick, because I know he's probably going to go with the 3 guys he trusts in Goodman, St. Clair, and Kripo, but I don't know. I think we're doing a disservice to guys like Sigur and Gavrin and Pantemis if we just totally overlook them and just go based off of guys that we like. I think we now have to be going, these guys are in really good form. Why don't we give them a shot? So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Jesse Marsch does in this upcoming window. I thought it would be great now to do a little bit of a CPL recap of where the league is at the moment. So looking in 8th place, sitting on 5 points, is Pacific. Just has not been a good season. Now, hasn't been a good year for Pacific, really, like dating all the way back to their last win. Their last win came on October 5th, 2025. That is atrocious. We want to be positive, and we want to hope that the league can grow and get better and be better and give an outlet to these players, but it's inexcusable. You can't go a year without winning a game, and they have quality players. So I'm very much not sure what is going wrong with Pacific, because they do have quality players. Now Terry Dunfield is there, so maybe we'll kind of see him get his fingerprints on the team and really help them along and hope for the best and try to get them back to where they used to be. These guys are a former CPL champion, so maybe he can help them at least turn that around a little bit and maybe get a win or 2 or 3 under their belts before this season is over, because my goodness, that is a long time without a win. Up in 7th place on 17 points is Halifax Wanderers, and they have to be the most disappointing team this season. They do still have quality players, like Isaiah Johnston has been one of the best players in the league this season. Caligari has been one of the best players in the league this season. I really thought that Vanni Sartini would come in and you would see Halifax be pushing for a league title this season and pushing for those playoff spots, but it has not been the case. I do still think you give Vanni Sartini time. I think that it will come good. He still needs, I think, to implement his style, his tactics, get some guys in, maybe, just another season with this team, like a remainder of this season going into next season, I think will do them the world of good, and maybe we'll see them kind of hop up the table. But then looking up in 6th, Inter Toronto, who have now moved up to 6th after their win this weekend. Inter Toronto started the season freaking great, but these last 10 or so games, out excluding the one that they just played against Halifax, were not great at all. Another team that has some great players. I mean, Altobelli, one of the best players in the league, in my opinion. Stefan Yates, I think, is a great player in this league as well. Many others. It just hasn't really clicked for them this season. It did at the start, but not since the start of the season. Mauro Stacchio, to me, is still one of the most exciting young Canadian manager prospects that we have. So if I'm Inter Toronto, I'm sticking with him. But yeah, really need Inter Toronto to turn it around, I think, just a little bit to try to get back into those playoff spots, those playoff hunt. Up in 5th is Supra, who will be semi-finalists in Can Champ in their first ever season in the league. That is really huge. And they are in the playoff hunt, but it's not looking promising. They are 9 points off of Atletico Ottawa at the moment. So definitely not dead and buried, but going to need to find that consistency. I think that's been Supra's biggest enemy this season, is finding consistency. They need to find that consistency. Players like Sean Rea, who's been undeniably one of the best players in the league this season. I've long been a fan of him, and rumors have since come out that apparently some MLS clubs are interested in Sean Rea. I really like that. He went to CF Montreal a couple years ago, never really got a fair shake, ended up coming back to the CPL, and has since looked like a very good player still. So I think there's a top level player in there. I think that he could go on to a good few MLS teams and find himself in and amongst the starting 11, or maybe just one of those guys that's on the radar of a starting 11, like one of the first guys off the bench kind of thing, depending on which team he would go to. But regardless, Supra, just find that consistency, and I do think that they can continue their playoff push. In 4th are Atletico Ottawa, who are out of Can Champ courtesy of Supra, but Atletico Ottawa leads Supra 9 points in the league and currently sitting 4th in that final playoff spot. I think for them it's been another team that they've suffered an up and down season, have been really good in spurts, have been kind of poor in spurts. Diego Mejia leaving definitely obviously wasn't ideal, but of course he had a great offer to go manage elsewhere and you could not turn it down. But yeah, Atletico Ottawa, I think once again, just find that consistency and they're good. They're only 8 points off of second in Forge, so not a terrible place to be in, looking very much like they will be in the playoffs this season outside of a super big push at the end of this season. But yeah, Atletico Ottawa, I think, in pretty good position right now. Moving up to 3rd, who would have thought Vancouver FC could be such a good team? Oh, wait, the guy on Maple Footy did when he said at the start of the season that Vancouver FC would be a team to watch. Even when results were not going Vancouver FC's way, I maintain Vancouver FC were a very good team, and Vancouver FC have since shown that they're a very good team, having won 4 of their last 5 games. They've been absolutely on a tear, beating a team like Forge in first at the time. That was huge for Vancouver FC. Really happy for them. Of course, I've had some of their players on the podcast, so really happy for Vancouver FC. I think that they started the season really well, just were not getting those results. Now they're still playing. They stuck to their tactics, their ideals, and they have reaped those rewards. They made it through those tough days of the start of the season and are now in playoff spots and could potentially find themselves in the postseason for the first time in their club's history if things stay as they are. So big up to Vancouver. Really happy for them. In second are Forge, who have found themselves in a bit of a rut. 2 losses on the bounce, winless in 3 matches. Not the Forge form that we have come to expect. Forge, of course, I think their main pitfall this season has been their attack. I think the attack has not been clicking as they used to, and they just cannot find goals. Their defense has been stellar. I think they're the best defense in the league. Rama, Yevremovic, Dan Nimick, Antoine Batiste, Daniel Crutzen. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting somebody. But all of them have been absolutely stellar. Borteau has been very good when called upon as well. So they're not the defense has been great. Like, they just have been. The midfield and the attack, though, is kind of where I think that Forge has lacked the consistency. Some games they look like they could pump you for 5 goals, and other games it looks like they're going to be lucky to even register a shot. And you just need to figure it out, because in a game, your defense, even if they're as good as this Forge defense are, they can't save you every single time. And that has kind of been the case these last 2 games, whether it be the loss against Vancouver FC or the loss against Cavalry. You need your attackers to show up and get you those goals. Brian Wright has been absent from the squad over the last number of weeks, wondering if it's maybe an injury. If it is, then get him healthy. You need him in this lineup, I think. A former CPL Player of the Year. His pedigree kind of speaks for itself. I would be putting Brian Wright in. But even when Forge did kind of look like they had some life injected into their attack with the loan signing of Levante Johnson. He goes out injured in his first match, and we haven't heard any updates on when he's going to be back, if he's going to be back, which I think is just kind of a shame because he looked really electric in that 45 minutes that he did play for the club. But yeah, overall, Forge just need to find that attacking flow, and I think that we could see them regain top spot over the team in first in Cavalry, a team who I have said all season has been the team to beat. And that kind of was the statement, I think, following their win against Forge this weekend. 2-1 Cavalry won. And just to me, top to bottom, look like the best team in the league. Everything's flowing super well. Tommy Wheeldon Jr. is maybe having Cavalry play the best football that I've seen them play. Their midfield looks phenomenal. Attack looks great. Defense is up there with Forge with how good they are defensively. In goal, Nate Ingham has been a great signing for them. So I really think that Cavalry, if they want to win this league, which obviously they do, but if they want to win this league, it is theirs, I think, to go on and win. Playoffs could be a different story because you never know how that's going to shake out. But league-wise, regular season-wise, it looks like it's Cavalry's at this moment in time. Only 2 points up on Forge, though. Forge does have a game in hand, so it isn't dead and buried by any means, any stretch of the imagination. But definitely Cavalry are looking like a top-class team at the moment and look like very difficult to beat. Outside of that, though, Canada Soccer looking like we're in a very good spot at the moment. The youth have shown that they can hang. Our U20s in the CONCACAF games did really, really well, made to the semifinals of that competition. Got absolutely screwed, shockingly, by the refs. It's CONCACAF. What can you do? But those guys played their hearts out, got themselves qualified for the U20 World Cup. Really excited to see what they can do at that level. A lot of the young guys on that, I mean, they're all young, but a lot of the guys on that team are CPL products or MLS products. Liam McKenzie is a product of the Vancouver Whitecaps. Fotsing, who is a product of the CPL, playing with Vancouver FC, looking like he will be going to the Vancouver Whitecaps, so that is absolutely huge. A guy like Zane Bruno had himself a very good tournament. Really happy to see him. Would like to see him play a lot more than he is with Forge, and there was a number of other guys that really impressed, so really happy with what those guys did. Showed that Canada, I think, has a very, very bright future. Was a shame with how they went out, but, you know, no point crying over spilled milk at this moment in time, but I think those guys did absolutely well during that tournament. And with that being said, that does wrap up this episode. Keep your eyes peeled. This Friday, we will be dropping a new interview. Really excited about that. The first ever man born in Ontario to coach a national team outside of Canada, Marco Bonifiglio, will be joining us on the podcast. So I do hope that you stick around for that. But outside of that, follow us on all the socials. You know the drill, at Maple Footy Pod everywhere. And just thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate it. And until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates. Remember to support Canadian football, be kind, and until next time, live, laugh, little.